Welcome back to the show. We got a great one lined up. Somebody roll that beautiful intro.
Digital Perspectives with Brad Kimes. Come on in.
Welcome back to the show. You can follow us on X, YouTube, and DigPerspectives.com for exclusive content. Right now, $3.44 trillion market cap. At the time of recording this video, the market is off 2.4. We see Bitcoin 108,900 plus, Ethereum 2,600 plus, coming up 3.2 in the last 24. XRP is 231 right now. We're up 0.2 in the 24 and up 5.6 on the 7-day here. All right, so here we go. Let's take a look at the range of price, ranging between 236 and 232, where we're currently sitting at the top of that range. Boy, I tell you, XRP is strong like bull. And what do we know today? Brad Garlinghouse is going to be testifying in front of a GOP Senate committee. And I tell you, it's on crypto market infrastructure. And I said, if you haven't watched my first video from this morning, please go watch that. The coronation begins. I believe you're going to hear Ripple discussed and described to the Senate committee, XRP and the XRP ledger described and mentioned to the Senate committee. And think of it for a moment. All these years that we've been watching the suppression, the ignoring of XRP and Ripple, the company, and now we're going to have Brad Garlinghouse sitting and testifying on the Senate. So today is just as fitting that this video really touch on unlocking the idle liquidity of the crypto space, the largest and greatest unlock of idle liquidity in crypto history. I believe that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's get started without any further ado. First, I want to tell you about Caleb and Brown, XRPwealth589.com, XRPwealth589.com. That's what you want to get a hold of, because you can get your free account open at Caleb and Brown, and you're going to love it. You're going to love it because they have free institutional grade custody, no hidden fees, no hidden spreads, one flat fee for trading. And you get human customer service, as well as the multiple layers of security on your account. You can even add extra restrictions to your account to keep it safe from any kind of threat of attack. How about that one? So with that being the case, let's take a look at this. Click that link underneath the video to get started. And well, looky here. It's old Free Pass Joe Lubin, CNBC. First, let me play the clip here.
What does Wall Street pay attention to? It pays attention to being able to make money. What are we going to demonstrate? Because decentralization is the direction of travel for the world, we believe. We believe that we're going to see Ether and Bitcoin continue to rise over the next years and decades as we paradigm shift to more and more decentralization. So that's going to put a bid under these tokens, and the anticipation of us and Saylor accumulating more and more consistently, both in large chunks as well as just selling ATM. We're able to acquire tens of millions of dollars in Ether a day via these ATM sales, and so we're just going to stay the course and continue to grow the concentration of Ether per.
Well, listen, while he's talking all of that, we know this is old Free Pass Lubin, right? Had no problem with the rest of the market and Ripple and XRP being sued while he got the advantage. He had no problem with it. In fact, he took on a God complex while it was happening. Now, all of a sudden, we see him with the buttoned up shirt. He's trying to dial it in a little bit. But the reality is that this really falls on CNBC here. CNBC, whatever you're doing, do better. This is who you're calling in. All the people you could have called, you called this one in? Listen, if Ethereum continues to go up, it's because of the interoperability of real USD and XRP onto the Ethereum network, because it'll help mass exodus all the builders that have been struggling to make something work on Ethereum's network. They won't have to struggle like that on the XRP ledger. We welcome it. Come on over. That's what I say. Come on in. Yeah, and Ripple has become a one-stop shop for enabling the Internet of Value. Listen to Eric Van Miltenberg lay it down.
And I think you mentioned that you joined Ripple, initially it was about payments. How did that journey look? And then how is it kind of turning into a different beast now?
Yeah, it has been an evolution. But the thing to call out, our mission, or vision, I should say, when I joined the company 8.5 years ago hasn't changed at all. And it predates my joining the company. It's really, we're trying to enable the internet of value. We believe in the ability that value should be moving around the world as efficiently as data moves around the internet. And historically it hasn't. And we think blockchain is a lever, if you will, that we can pull and address that. Back even before I joined, there was a discussion of, okay, so if you believe in that, where do you start? It's sort of this wide field. There's so many different applications. And our analysis led us to say that cross-border payments was really our flagship. It was a great insertion point so we can prove the value and address some of the inefficiencies that sort of exist in the legacy payment system. And we've done a great job with that over the last 9 years or so. Hundreds of customers around the world. We've built out a payments network that addresses 90% of the FX traded. We've processed $70 billion worth of transactions. So we gained a lot of momentum, and I think we've established ourselves as a credible, serious player to help bridge the gap between more of a TradFi world and a DeFi world as it relates to payments. But in doing that, we started in conversations with customers, seeing other needs and other opportunities. The whole idea of on-ramps and off-ramps between fiat currency and digital currency. And so we started building up liquidity capabilities. You don't have to think about it too long to say, well, if financial institutions are going to start to hold digital assets, how do they hold them? So custody is important. We went and acquired a company about 2 years ago called Medico out of Switzerland that has an enterprise-grade custody solution that now is part of the Ripple portfolio. Again, the ability to move easily out of currencies. Stablecoins, important. We launched Ripple USD, RLUSD, back in December as a stablecoin offering, largely because our customers were using stablecoins and that payments flow as a bridge currency between two fiat currencies. And they were asking, why don't you guys have a stablecoin? I'd rather just work with you on the payments and the stablecoin instead of having to go and source that from other ways.
Well, and there it is, isn't it? Who else is bridging traditional finance in the manner that Ripple has been doing for more than a decade? It's a very, very short list, ladies and gentlemen, and it's where the larger part of the liquidity of the world is trapped. When we're talking about idle liquidity in this video, we're not only talking about the idle liquidity of XRP being unlocked, but we're also talking about unlocking the liquidity of the traditional finance system onto this digital on-chain economy. So it's really twofold, the conversation, and it all comes back to Ripple, Real USD, and XRP. Well, look at this. Hello, Wall Street. Ripple Swell 2025 is in New York City. Isn't that fitting? You just heard Eric Van Miltenberg tell you from Ripple, they're bridging traditional finance. That's what they're doing. Well. Look who's going to be here. It's a bunch of traditional finance people. Isn't that interesting? Franklin Templeton, Sandy Call. How about Carolyn Weinberg from BNY Mellon? How about Ryan Rugg from Citibank? And we already know that they're working in tandem with Swift, Citi, and Ripple for solutions for cross-border payments and settlement. And we know that Citi is one of the largest liquidity providers in the world. Fitting, huh? And isn't it fitting that RippleNet really works in a manner that is much more powerful than just Swift's messaging? Swift only does messaging. The liquidity comes from the Citibanks and the JP Morgans and the others, but what Ripple does is a combination of all of that. Isn't that interesting? Or how about Hidden Road, the recent acquisition by Ripple? Michael Higgins will be there. And how about Giovanni from the CME Group? How about that? This is something else. This lineup here is absolutely right from Krippenreiter. This powerful lineup is very, very impressive. And it shows you, and I think boasts, in fact, to what is about to happen when this legislation is no longer legislation, but becomes law. Again, trickle, trickle, then flood. We're talking, now we've seen this video before about Ripple Swell a couple years ago where Nick Biorfedo actually spoke to Brad Garlinghouse. And I want you to hear just the first part of this, and then we'll move forward because you need to know the next part too.
First thing is, I met with Brad Garlinghouse face to face, and Brad was so confident. He's got an air of confidence about him that's unbelievable. I met Brad first in 2019 back in Singapore, and he's even more confident today than he was back then. He made it clear that they're ready to settle with the SEC as long as they can get clarity on XRP. I asked him if American companies were waiting on the sidelines to jump in the game once clarity happens, and he said absolutely. And he specifically said Bank of America. Bank of America is a huge partner of Ripple, and he said Bank of America stands to gain really big when the settlement happens because they're going to have a huge competitive advantage.
How about that, huh? How about that? And then right here, I want you to listen to Zach Rector. Now, this was from back in April, but this matters because what we're talking about now is the XRP multiplier, the market cap multiplier effect. And Zach does a great job of explaining it here, so I want to use his video because it'll set the tone. And then we're going to go on and talk about this next, more current video that he's got in conjunction with Chad Steingraber's post here about this Bank of America 118 multiplier. We'll get there, but let's listen to the multiplier equation explained first. Take a listen. All of this, again, about, unlocking the idle liquidity of XRP and bringing the liquidity that's locked up in the traditional finance over to the new digital on-chain economy.
Do you want to see how XRP reaches $15 and beyond using conservative assumptions and simple math? Well, I got you covered. I hope everybody's having a blessed Sunday. We're going to be using JP Morgan's predictions of 4 to 8 billion of inflows into XRP after the ETFs go live. We're going to run with the conservative side, that $4 billion of inflow prediction, and we're going to plug it into my market cap multiplier equation. And I'm going to show you the math on how XRP gets to 15 bucks. Check it out. All right, so we're going to run you through the math. This is the market cap multiplier by yours truly. So the equation's very simple. It is just the change in market cap divided by the net flow. This is what gives us our multiplier. So in a very simple example, we have a change in market cap of 1 billion, or the market cap increased by 1 billion, and we had 10 million of net inflows into the asset. That example would give us a 100x multiplier. Now yesterday, Saturday, April 12th, I shared an example of XRP having a multiplier of 601 during an 8-hour window. During this 8-hour period, XRP's market cap grew by $7.74 billion, but it only had 12.87 million of net inflows. This is a very dramatic multiplier of 601x over an 8-hour period. Now, JP Morgan, they gave us a prediction of 4 to 8 billion of inflows after the XRP ETFs go live in the first year. So we're going to see tremendous amount of inflows into XRP from the ETFs, but JP Morgan, their prediction is 4 to 8 billion. Okay, let's run with that. And I'm going to keep it conservative. So we have the 4 billion of net inflows into XRP through the ETFs, and I'm going to run with just a 200x multiplier, not 601, but let's have a little fun and we'll use 200x as our example. That would see XRP's market cap growing by 800 billion. Now, as I record this update today on April 13th, XRP's market cap is at 125 billion or $2.15 roughly. Now, if we add the 125 billion to 800 billion that we would see in market cap growth based off of these inflows, you're at a $925 billion market cap for XRP. Now, I'm assuming that we have 60 billion circulating supply. Right now, the supply is actually at like 58 billion. But just running with assumption, rounding off to make this math easy for everybody to understand, we're going to assume 60 billion circulating supply. That puts us at a $15 XRP. Now, you could be more bullish with your assumptions, and maybe, JP Morgan predicts 4 to 8 billion. Maybe we see more. And we could see a more dramatic multiplier. Maybe it's less dramatic. But when these ETFs go live, one thing's for sure, we are going to see significant amounts of inflow into XRP. I've laid out my equation. I've yet to see anybody refute this.
And I don't think you're going to, because I think Zach's got it on lock right there. Now let's go to this one. This is the Bank of America 118 multiplier. And I want you to listen to his, well, actually, let me run through this really quickly. So Bank of America stated that every dollar of new money that enters equates to $118 of market cap increase. This is a dynamic multiplier, which means it can go up or down based on the velocity of money hitting the order books. You know, another way to explain this with the multiplier and how the multiplier can change in real time is the fact that what you're talking about is how much money it takes to buy out the order books and move the price up or down at any given moment. That's what you're talking about here. So listen to this clip too from Zach.
Massive inflows into XRP on this Monday morning, folks. Check it out. Huge shout out to Chad Steingraber for grabbing this data. 1.58 billion in inflows just on this one exchange, Upbit, out of South Korea. Now, I already tracked a 235x multiplier on XRP this morning. When it had 18 million of inflows, its market cap grew by 4.27 billion. So you take that market cap growth, you divide it by the net inflows of 18 million, and it gave me that market cap multiplier of 235x. But that was before we saw this. So I just am dropping a full update on YouTube right now. We'll be circling back at the end of the day to see how we finished up. But XRP closed the weekly above 225. That was a critical level that we needed to flip back into support. That has been done. And you guys saw David Schwartz on the Dragon floaty over the weekend. I think that he was sending us the signal that XRP is ready to fly. Lock in. Massive inflows into XRP on.
I like that. And I'm ready for it to fly. Listen, I know you guys are too. But here's what I'm excited about. When you think about this over the next few years, XRP should reach its max supply in the next few years. Afterwards, the number of XRP units will only shrink due to the burning of transaction fees. As long as XRP demand grows or even remains the same, XRP scarcity should be positive for XRP price. Well, if you remember, if we go right to, and I'm going to try to highlight this and get right to it here. Let me see if I can go right here. I think it's right about here. This is Miguel Villas, used to be head of XRP Global Markets, explaining, I don't think we'll ever get rid of all of it and release it all into the wild, because we might have to create some other kind of an organization. Remember, Ripple just applied to become a bank.
Capability of changing the world. And, I've had conversations with, Chris Larson and Arthur and David around the fact that it is, I think, transformational software that we kind of owe it our best effort to get it to where it belongs and where it deserves to be.
No question about it. You could tell how passionate Miguel is about his work when he was there, and he's still very passionate about it, I'm sure. So now let's move forward to, I believe it's right here even.
Look back someday and be like, wow, I can't believe I was a part of that. So yeah, I'm obviously pretty stoked.
Like, how do you intend to distribute the rest of the XRP then?
Yes, listen.
Yeah, no, that's a good question, Mahir. And I don't necessarily know that we'll ever distribute all of it. In my mind's eye, there's a possibility where, we end up more of a lending kind of, more of a lender of last resort capacity, maybe. I think that would be a little strange for a software company, and maybe some things would have to change structurally. Maybe we have to have a different organization or something. Who knows?
Maybe Ripple applies for a national banking charter and a master account to the Federal Reserve. Sound right? Again, we're talking about unlocking the idle liquidity of XRP and unlocking the liquidity of the traditional financial world to this new digital on-chain economy. Remember, at Singapore press conference, Brad Garlinghouse announced that Ripple's stablecoin Real USD will be accepted as collateral for all services at Hidden Road, settling $3 trillion a year. And Hidden Road just got approved to help settle the $2 quadrillion at the DTC as well. So when you start thinking about all the total value locked up for XRP and all the potential possibilities, you got DeFi situations, you got automated market makers, you got ETF approvals we're waiting on, you got the U.S. digital asset bond issuance that I believe is going to happen according to my conversations on stage with the Honorable Cristiano Carlo. I believe we will see XRP bonds, Bitcoin bonds, Solana bonds, ADA bonds issued by the U.S. Treasury, just like wartime bonds. That's what I think. And I think once we see all of these things in effect, you're going to see a great demand to lock up this asset. And as you do, you're going to also see the demand of the financial side of the market that needs to use it every day for clearing, settlement, and payments. And that is nothing but upward pressure. And then all to say that if there was each day the same amount of Ripple transactions as Swift messages, after 50 years, 98% of XRP will still exist. Remember, there's a small burn rate to every little transaction that burns a little of XRP to keep the asset deflationary, always going up in price. But even with that being said and understood, XRP has a 70,000 year lifespan. Remember, the US dollar serving as a global reserve currency is at 80 years. And out of the last 5 national currencies to serve as a global reserve currency, 2 of them, Portugal and Netherlands, had a lifespan of 80 years. And with XRP in a lifespan of 70,000, I say watch out, because it just may be XRP that ends up underpinning the US dollar for the next 70,000 years, maybe? Not financial advice from me or anyone else. I'll catch all of you on the next one.